Welcome to episode 27 of Duties of the Heart, and we are still in the gate of serving God. We're now to chapter 6, and we're going to continue with this dialogue between the mind and the soul. The discussion is going to be a person's obligation of service corresponds to the degree of favour bestowed upon him. This is the issue that is being dealt with in this dialogue between the mind and the soul. So, Rabbi Bachya begins. The soul. I have understood what you have said, and your explanation is sufficient. Now explain to me the various ways in which I am under an obligation of increased service to God. May He be exalted. The mind. People come under an obligation of increased service according to the favour, general and particular, bestowed upon them. Favour is bestowed on human beings in 4 ways. The first is the goodness of the Creator, which embraces all of mankind. He brought them into existence when previously they did not exist. He gives them life, and He favours them with all that we have spoken of in the second gate of this book. They are accordingly under a universal obligation of service to the Creator. This consists of obedience to all the commandments called for by the intellect, which were observed by Adam, Chanach, Noach and his sons, and Job and his friends, up to the days of Moshe, our master, peace be upon him. Whoever adheres to all these for the sake of God's service, God will bestow upon him favours beyond those enjoyed by other people, and will raise him to a higher level in this world and give him great reward in the world to come, as with Avraham, to whom God said in Genesis 15 verse 1, Do not fear, Avraham, I am a shield to you. Your reward will be very great. Whoever rebels against God, despite his favours, will fall from a degree of rational beings and their virtues to the low level of an irrational creature. In this world he will share the fate of the beasts, as it is written in Psalms 37 verse 20. God's enemies will be consumed like the glory of the pastures. They will be consumed in smoke. And in the next world he will suffer the worst possible evil, as it is written in Yeshayahu 33 verse 11, As to your spirit, fire will consume you. The second way, the Creator's favour bestowed on one people amongst the peoples, one nation among the nations, as He favoured the children of Israel, when He took them out of Egypt and brought them to the land of Canaan. Correspondingly, He required of them additional service, beyond the first level of service, namely adherence to the commandments that have their origin in revelation alone, after first warning them and exhorting them in regard to the commandments called for by the intellect. Whomever assumed this service for the glory of God, God singled him out for special favour and held him under an obligation of service beyond that of his nation or the rest of his tribe. We find, for example, in the case of the tribe of Levi, when Moshe said, and he quotes from Shemos 32 verse 26, Whoever is for God, come to me. And all the Leviim gathered themselves to him. God lavished favour upon them and chose from amongst them Aaron and his sons to minister to his glory, charged them with special precepts in addition to those given to the rest of the nation, and promised them great reward in the world to come. But whoever of them rebels against the Creator will fall from both levels and will be punished in both worlds. As King Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 8 verse 13, It will not be well with the wicked, nor will he prolong his days. The third way, God's favours upon a family amongst the families of the nation, such as the Kohanim and the Leviim and the royal seed of the house of David. Correspondingly, he required of them increased service. The duties of the Kohanim and Leviim are known and clearly set forth in the book of God's law. The duties of the house of David are as it is written, and he quotes from Yirmiyahu 21 verse 12. House of David, this is what God has said, execute justice in the mornings and deliver the robbed from the hands of the oppressor. Whoever completely fulfills these duties out of love for God's will, God will single him out for special favor in this world and with great reward in the next. He will be a distinguished nobleman or a teacher of righteousness, as scripture says of Pinchas, and he quotes from Tehillim 106. Then Pinchas stood up and did justice, and the plague was arrested. This was counted to him as a merit from generation to generation forever. And he goes on to quote Yecheskel 44 verse 15. But the priests of the tribe of Levi, the descendants of Tzadok, who kept the service of my sanctuary when the children of Israel went astray from me, they will approach me to attend on me. But whoever rebels against God in these matters will fall from all high levels in this world and will be subject to great suffering in the next, as you know from the account of Korach and his company. The fourth way, God's favor upon an individual by which he is singled out from the rest of his family and people and from the rest of mankind, as, for example, a chosen prophet, a ruler and sovereign to lead a nation, a wise man whose spirit God has inspired with wisdom, understanding and counsel and the like. For every one of these endowments he is under an obligation of additional service to God. He who perfects his service, all the blessings in the world, universal and particular, will be continually with him. In addition, God will give him great command of these gifts and insight into them, as it is written, God has sworn to David truly, he will not turn back from it. Of the fruit of your body I will set you upon your throne. If your sons keep my covenant and my testimonies, which I will teach them, their sons too forever will sit upon your throne. This is from Psalms 132. The reward in the world to come is as it is written, also is quoted from Tehillim 27:13. Had I not trusted that I would behold the goodness of God in the land of life eternal. But he who rebels against God, despite the blessing with which he has distinguished him, will fall from all the special levels. God will hold him to a stricter accounting in this world, as it is written, and he quotes from Leviticus 10:3. This is what God meant when he said, with those close to me will I be sanctified, and before all the people will I be glorified. And Aharon remained silent. And he also quotes from Amos 3 verse 2. Only you have I known amongst all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. And his punishment in the next world will be even more severe, as it is written in Yeshayahu 30 verse 33. Tophet has long been prepared. For the king it is made ready, deep and wide. Its fire pit has plenty of fire and wood. The breath of God, like a stream of brimstone, burns within it. It is on account of these four kinds of favor that people come under obligation of service to God. The more the Creator bestows favor upon a person, the greater is his obligation of service. This is illustrated by the following. Produce is subject to the law of tithing, as it says in Deuteronomy 14 verse 22. You shall tithe all the produce of your seed. One to whom God has given 100 measures of produce is obliged to give 10 measures. One to whom God has given only 10 measures has to give 1 measure. If the former were to separate 9.5 measures and the latter were to separate 1 measure, the former would be punished, while the latter would receive a reward. Similarly, if someone does not have a son, the obligation of circumcising his son and teaching him Torah does not apply to him. If a person is lame, the duty of going to Yerushalayim for the 3 festivals is not obligatory for him. If someone is sick, those commandments which he is unable to fulfill are not binding upon him. Analogously, if a person has been singled out by the Creator, may he be exalted, for special favor, he is under an obligation of increased service as an expression of gratitude for this favor. For this reason, the early pietists, whenever they were graced with some blessing from among the blessings of the world, would be apprehensive for two reasons. Number one, that they not be deficient in fulfilling the service and expressing the gratitude they owed for this good fortune, so that it not turn into misfortune for them. As our forefather Yaakov said in Genesis 32 verse 11, I am diminished from all the kindness. And number two, that this not be the Creator's reward for their service, at the expense of their rewards in the world to come. As explained by the early ones on the verse, and he quotes from Deuteronomy 7 verse 10, he repays his enemies to their face, i.e. during their lifetime, so as to destroy them in the life after the world to come. This should suffice you. And now Rabbi Bachya is going to continue with this dialogue between the soul and the mind, and they're going to discuss the way to pure intention in the service of God. So the soul starts. I have understood what you have said, but find myself unable to repay my debts to the Creator for his favours, which embrace all mankind, and certainly not for those which he has specially favoured me. When it is my wish and desire to repay what I owe for them, what immediately comes to mind, while in the act of fulfilling some service, is the hope for some future benefit from him. So it is when I thank God, in my speech I thank him for his great kindness towards me, while my thought and intent in offering thanks are the wish that the favour be continued and increased. I do not renounce all expectation of any increase in favour or of its perpetuation. Since it is in this fashion that I serve God and offer thanks to him, lacking the pure intention that is due for his beneficence, how will I ever be able to fulfill the rest of the service I owe him for the bounties with which he has specially favoured me? I therefore need to have you teach me the minimum of service that I must render for these favours, so that I may be worthy of their perpetuation. The mind replies, what you have complained about, your lack of proper intention in serving God and offering thanks to him, that the words of your mouth are those of one who expresses thankfulness, while your accompanying intent is that of one who requests, and in the wish in your heart is for an increase in the favour, and its perpetuation is due to three traits. The first trait is the great love you have for yourself and your desire to gain self-gratification. You take no step in the service of God or anything else without the intent to enjoy through this some pleasure. I have already prescribed when I began to treat you that you should try with all your power to distance yourself from this despicable trait. In this lies my hope for your well-being. The second trait is your failure to understand the kindness of the Creator towards you. You imagine that blessing is obtained only by soliciting it. Actually, God has been good to you in ways you are aware of and unaware of. And when you solicit him, you do not realize he has done all this for you from the beginning. If you would keep far from such thoughts, your service would be wholly devotional. Your thanksgiving to him would reflect your inner feelings, and you would be more worthy and deserving of what you hope for from him. The third trait is that you do not know yourself, nor do you recognize the way in which you are governed. You consider yourself worthy of the greatest of all blessings, and you never cease asking for them. Whenever you attain any one of them, your thoughts turn to what is above it. You do not, however, consider the Creator, may he be exalted, to be worthy of the highest service on your part. When you render any service, you regard it as a favour you bestow upon God, though you know that you are dependent on him and that he has no need of you. If you were to banish from yourself this ignorance, look carefully with an attentive eye and recognize that your Creator thinks of you and knows better than you what is or is not good for you, you would be content with whatever favours he bestows upon you. And you would offer great thanks to him for them with a perfect heart. You would not rest your hopes on what prevents you from recognizing the bounties you have received and from discharging the obligations that you owe God for them. It is impossible that you should not attain what you are deserving of when it is due you on account of your service, and not merely because you hope for it and fix your mind on it. So that concludes the 6th chapter, and very sobering words from the mind to the soul, keeping the soul in check. The soul, although perhaps feeling genuine feelings of exaltation in being one of God's chosen one, is requesting perhaps too much at this stage. Don't forget, he's a servant. If you're a servant, you must keep your humility. But you should know one thing about a servant and the king. The servant is never far from the king. The king always wants the servant by his side. Princes and the princesses, they have to gain access to the king, but the servant is always by the side of the king. But you must respect that, and you have to keep your humility, and you have to really act as if you really haven't done anything worthy of your position, and have that mindset, and keep your head down, keep working. Don't worry about the blessings, they'll come. Don't worry about being looked after, they will come. And be worthy, be a worthy servant. And so I look forward to the next episode, chapter 7, which should be the next one.